hold these surnames, and while you, the sad bit about tonight is just that I didn't want to come over and wreck the common law, the effort that people are making to get involved in common law, because common law is the real thing. But we are just not. While you hold these surnames, and while you are a beneficiary of that corporation that is foreign to this land here, they assume that you've accepted it. So the hardest part is, well, what do we? You know, we've got to drop all of that. Yet it's paying our pensions. It's paying all this sort of stuff. And the reason why they want that type of government is because it's tyranny. You are charged with, when they charge you, you've been charged without a trial. In a normal common law court, you can't be charged. You've got to be accused, and before the charging. But in this, they just send you the charge. There's a charge, and because you're in the military, that's what you are. A citizen is a military account, and when you're in the military, you have to do what you're told. So they charge you. You've got to pay the debt, and you've got to pay. And if you say no, you become a belligerent of the state, because you agreed by accepting the surname and by becoming a citizen, which is an antichrist. You've joined it, and that's where the consent for these governments have come.
So it comes when you accept that surname, you're accepting the fraud, and all
that comes with her.
Comes with it. That's right. All right. Cool.
Now, so sorry.
That's a lot to digest. Are you guys
and I want to say sorry for this. I want to say sorry, and we've all. It was Sire.
Yeah.
It was a sire name, and it was probably written as John Henry from the clan or that. But the fact that on your state birth certificate, it's not written in English. It's written in either all uppercase text, or it's written in a form of English that states it's a symbol. And what that is when you italic, in English, if you have an italic word which is leaning over, that's saying from another place. And if you underline a word, underlining means italic, and italic means from another jurisdiction or another place. So the sire name, or the true name, is not on any of the documents you hold. If you pull out your driver license, your bank cards, and all these things, is that your name? And if you don't know your English that we were taught at school years ago, you'll go, yeah, that's my name. But it's not, because it's not even a word. It doesn't, a word, a capitalized word is only the first letter of a word.
All lowercase.
And all the rest lowercase. In English language, there is no two or more symbolic symbols in English. So you're right, the fact that you do have a surname that comes, it's not a surname, it's a sire name, but that's not written on these fraudulent, not so much this one, but this is a fiction too. But on your state birth certificate, the fact that it's not written as a proper noun in English is telling you it's not there.
That's a fraud.
It's a fraud. I went to a court case in Cairns to help. You probably know him, the guy, the butterfly man up on the tablelands. And when we got out, I said, the court is telling you it's not a court. And he looked up there, David Walters, lovely guy. And he looked up at the sign, and he said, are you saying that that's not, are you telling me that's not a court? I said, it reads Cairns Courthouse, I think it read. But it didn't read it, because it was written in that shit. That fool stuff that I got taught, that we did it for liability, so we wouldn't be liable for what we can fool the people with. It was just the biggest, and there it is. The Cairns Courthouse is telling you it's not a courthouse. And the banking documents are telling you they're not real. But all you got to do is, once you read it, and it was so, well, it was, I must have been so right that Gail Kelly, the CEO of Westpac, was gone the next day. She did not want to answer the question.
Ron, I want to ask you, now here in the community, there's a lot to take in, I know, but in the community here, you've been in the courts a couple of times with a few big cases. Now, one of them we know that you are responsible for is going to be with the removal of fluoride from our drinking water. Can you tell us just a little bit more about that? And I'm going to ask you about another one in a minute too, okay?
Yes. Okay. I'm the evil one that got the fluoride out of the water. His name, Andrew Mashford. He came around and said, Rom, I'm sick of drinking this fluoride because I'm lucky I've got a creek up at the back of my place and I drink the water that's out of this creek. It's beautiful. And I must say, a few years ago, someone died up on the Red Arrow. I think it was a few years ago, someone from Perth, an older guy, and he fell into the creek for about 400 metres. And I was drinking the water for 4 days. One of these guys was rotten to bits in the creek, and I was fine. So just sometimes I know that's a bit of a bad.
We'll leave it in. All right.
But so I didn't drink the town water. I never drank it. And some people used to blame me. Maybe that's what made me crazy. But he came in and said, Rom, I don't want to drink the fluoride in the water. And he said, do you know how to get it out? And I said, yes, I do know how to get it out if you want it out. And I said, it's pretty easy. The government say that there's 2,000 doctors or dentists or medical people that claim fluoride is safe for your teeth and safe for your health. So I said, we will write a letter saying, please supply one doctor that will accept commercial liability with his name and date of birth and say, is the fluoride safe? I knew they wouldn't get one. I knew that. So then I said, if you cannot supply one doctor that can say that the fluoride is safe, then we will agree to drink the fluoride in the water for $250,000 a year. That's the smallest, simplest
per person.
But no, only him.
This is for him.
But the minute he sets a precedent, that's what they didn't want. So 4 days after that, I said, there you go, that'll probably work. I didn't really think it would work, but he did it. And then I think it was only four days after it, the Cairns Regional Council came on with a big front page thing and said that they'd smashed the fluoride machine. Then Andrew came around and he said, they didn't respond, they smashed the fluoride machine. I said, that's the response. They said, but I wanted the 250,000. But I said, you asked me to get rid of the fluoride out of the water. And I said, you never say no. Because in corporate law or in commercial trading, never say no. It's always yes, and then that's it. And you've got to just check. Some things, it might be good to, I'll do that for free. But if it's a nasty one, like the fluoride in the water, he just said, okay, well, $250,000 a year, he can go up the creek, and I think there's up at Crystal Cascades, there's creeks coming down. Sometimes we get our water from there, and he's getting paid for it. But that's what happened. And then after that, I got a mention on InfoWars, which was, I went, whoa, that's an interesting thing. And then we got a call from a small town in Michigan that was up that, that side of the US,
up by Canada.
Up that, it's all green.
Yeah.
That's what I know. And they asked, because America, or the United States, is full of fluoride. And I think they did the same thing. They actually got it out of their water supply as well. Now, I'm not, I don't know, but I don't think, I don't know if fluoride is safe or not. I don't believe it's safe. But if we couldn't get one doctor to say it was safe out of the government's claim that it was 2,000. And the process again is just, all I'm doing is okay, you want me to do that? I've what do they do? Consideration. I've considered it, and I think that the compensation should or could be around, X amount of dollars. Now, I never say that straight out. I say, well, that's what I think. Then you send them the notice and ask them, what would they think? Do they think the compensation is, in that case, 250,000, or with Gail Kelly, I agreed, I think it was 850,000 a year to accept the mortgage. Because if the mortgage was written in some deed-based language, it's a fraud. So I didn't say I don't want it. I said, no, I'm not saying I'm not going to accept the mortgage. I said, I'll accept it, but it could be a fraud. So therefore, I don't want to be involved in a fraud. So I'll charge you. It's a fair bit for a fraud. It was 850,000 a year. I think the mortgage is only 120 a week. It was there was a big difference in, and they just went, no. And even the bailiff, when he came round after that, because I hadn't paid the mortgage, it wasn't there, but he came round with the letter still sealed in the envelope. Now, the way they transfer these debts to us is only through mail. The mail is the only thing, and that's why mail today is a 2-to-1 ratio. Some might have seen this in the which are called ledgers. And a ledger, if you put in the dictionary, a ledger is a stone that sits on top of a grave, and it sits at a 2-to-1 ratio. So, and the writing on graves are written in the deed-based Latin, because when you go into the grave as a citizen, that grave says you're dead and you will never come back to life. You are dead forever. That's why they're there. So when you get a letter from the government, it will be a 2-to-1 ratio. It will have a window in it usually. So that's why they're there. So when you get a letter from the government, it will be a 2-to-1 ratio. It will have a window in it usually, so you can see inside. And the writing on it is the dead ledger language, which is all uppercase, deed-based Latin, your names and that. So the minute you open one of those ledgers, it's like scraping back the ledger, the tombstone off the grave, and the spirits of the dead. And you're gone. And that's the sick side of it. The Masonic, why do Masons worship the goat? The goat in the Black's-Law dictionary, G-O-8. In the normal dictionary, we know what a goat is. But G-O-A-T in the Black's-Law dictionary is the sewer. And the sewer is the underworld, where the water from the sea usurps up through the cities through the sewer, and then comes up. And that's how the law of the sea is usurped up into these cities. Yeah.
Before you answer that, the question is, if you get a government notice via email, so they don't send it to you in traditional mail.
Yeah.
Right? Is that correct? So how is that affect its significance?
Yeah, that's they will try everything, but in my case, I don't open them. I will not open an email. So if it does come, and sometimes, now I had this little argument with Mr. Comans, because they tried to send me the notices, because I never open anything. It's always sent back to, and this came up because on the bench, I said, look, I haven't received, I think one of the court, the court went for about 4 or 5 days. It was at $300,000 back then. I never paid a cent. It cost them that. Actually, it cost the prosecutor that, because they created the debt, and because they couldn't confer the debt onto their debtor, they thought they had to pay it. But the mail that I sent back, Mr. Comans had that on his bench, and he said, why didn't you turn up to court? And I said, well, I didn't know the court date, because we had to change it, because my ex-partner's mum had passed away and had to go to the funeral, and it was on the court date. So as a good so-called citizen, I went into the court and said, look, I can't make it this day. I don't open your mail. I don't do any of that. I said, you're forcing this on me, but I'm cool about that. Can you please tell me the court date for the new date? And they said, we can't. we can only issue it through the mail. And I said, I cannot open it. I don't open your mail. It's against the law. It's not my name, and it's 25 years imprisonment to interfere with another person's, 10 years to interfere with, 14 years to interfere with another person's name, and 10 years mail fraud if you open someone else's mail. So then they tried to send it through email, but it came with an attachment. So I did open the email, but there was an attachment, and I didn't open the attachment. And when it came, I said, I didn't open any attachments. I don't know what you were talking about. But as soon as I said, did you send, he said, we sent you the mail and you returned it. And I said to him, did you write my name on it? And he said, yes. So I got the name. I said, is it written in English? He said, yes. And said, well, surely there's an address. And he went to read, I think he read the first part of the word of the address that was written in debased Latin. You see the mail's always sometimes the name or the, yeah. As soon as he said that, I said, you told me you could read English. I said, you said that. And he just got the mail, he went, then let's forget about that. He just pushed it aside, don't worry. And then from then on, it was Mr. Comans and I, he was the magistrate. He said, look, from now on, Rom, this is between just you and me, you and I. And so that's how we got through it. And I knew by then, it was also a military magistrate. They flew him up because the prosecutor said, we don't understand your stuff. He said, it's a bit of a bother for us because I was complying to everything, pleaded guilty to everything. But they couldn't understand, but he was good. He was a military magistrate. He understood that it was just trust law. You are either the debtor or the creditor. And all the magistrates, and even the High Court of Australia, when you get a case into the High Court, all they determine is, did the process of law, was it the process of law, was it conducted? They want to make sure that the lower courts, just as long as the process of law was being conducted correctly, because they cannot break the trust. If they've got a creditor in the courtroom, they thought it was a debtor, but they found out it was a creditor, then it's straight away, they can't, that's why, you know, sometimes they say some of these Masons, they get away with murder. It's just that those people, and not lower Masons, I mean probably 32, 31, 32 and 33, that are the only ones that may know this. They understand that it's just a creditor-debtor based system. But you're right, with the mail, I don't open that. I don't have bank accounts or anything anymore. So it's been great. I put my cash in a bucket. And when I go to the bucket, it's the same amount of cash is still there that I put in.
That actually leads me to my next question for you.
Yes.
Now, you've got, along with all the rest of us, we've got this this vault, if you will, of your wealth that belongs to you as a living man, right? As a Romley Stewart.
Yeah.
And that the Vatican holds for you, or
now
they control it for you.
But before we go,
Okay.
I'm not the living man. There's the reason why the so-called Star of David, it's got 6 points, but it's made of two pyramids. One like that, and the bottom one like that. The top one is the Old Testament, and the bottom one is the New Testament. And the word testament means contract. So the top contract is God, look at this way, God, man, Vatican, debtor. So the Vatican has become the third party. Man, and that's why it says, when God said, oh, look at man, he's become like one of us. What he meant is that when God granted the dominion to man, man went, oh, I'm not sure I want this, I'll grant it to something else. So he's granted that down to the Vatican. The reason why the Vatican, or Moloch, or Satan took it is because he knew how to convert that back. He knew how to convert the debt back onto man, onto the unsuspecting man. But what happens is, the testament of Christ is another trust, and to enter into that, you enter in as human. So the top one, God, man, and Vatican, and then it comes to human, and then animal. And an animal is a citizen. If you look in the dictionary, an animal is just a citizen. If you look in the dictionary, a citizen technically is an animal. It doesn't have the power of a human, whereas human is the colour of man in the second testament of Christ. So Christ has given us a new covenant sort of thing, or a new contract, but we have to be a fiction. So there's man is real living, and some people may want to get back to that, but the Christian system really is it's a quasi or a fiction system that will serve you if you know where you stand in that. In other words, if I was a passenger on the ship, maybe the passenger's having a good time on the ship and doesn't want to leave the ship and says, no, this is all right. So he stays on the ship as the passenger, where the crew are complaining and whinging because they don't have any bill of right on the ship, but the passenger has it. So in the Christian system, like Christ is always saying, that he has died for us. So I'm not saying he was a real man, but in this trust thing, Christ has died for us and he's become our debtor. But if you become the debtor of Christ, well, then you become the citizen. And whatever Christ is, he's going to bash that citizen. Which is a pretty horrible, I'm not an antichrist, I'm not that. It's just that the second testament is not really what it is, and maybe the story that's there. What do they call that when it's a story, but it's a it's a story that is there. It's a bit like the ark when in the Ten Commandments, Noah and his ark. If you look at the ark, the word ark means a roof over livestock. You see? And then how many decks did the ark have? 3 decks: debtor, creditor, and administrator. So when you look at all this, and while the whole world was flooded, that was floating at sea. And then the minute it touched the ground, it created a new, I think that was the new covenant or the new contract, but it was under shipping law with debtor, creditor. So some of these stories that we see in the Bible are actually, they're just things it's like dream time.
Right, so I've had this conversation with you before. What I want to get to is you've got another case where you were in the courts, and I think it dealt with Ergon, and you were trying to access your wealth. Because, it's yours, right? So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I won the Ergon case. I seem to win all the cases.
Yeah, this one's particularly interesting to me.
But this one, I don't even win them. They just kind of go, oh, it's not what we thought. So I don't know, and I'm not really a winner at this, but I did work out what's happening. After the court case in 2016, when I was the worst man in the world and I was a terrorist, and I won it, I guess. Well, they just let me go. They just said, oh, you can go now. And a lawyer from across the road, who was the duty lawyer, Paul Richardson, and he was always watching, and he's a lawyer, and he's a really lovely guy too, you know. Actually, most of these people in the court are actually they're not as mean as we think. They're just doing a job with the debtor and creditor. But he said to me, Rom, I'm aware of the Ergon Energy case, and you're owed $29 million, because that's what I charged Ergon for acting as the debtor of holding their debts, to accept their debts. I said, I'll accept your debt, and I sent them the bill. And then the first case went before Magistrate McFadden, and it was really weird, but they brought the sheriff in, John something Brace, and in the end the magistrate said, did you respond to this letter that came back from Rom agreeing to pay the Ergon debt for, I think it was 750,000. And I got these figures from the CEOs of the Commonwealth of Australia Corporation, and on those filed in this US SEC, and these guys are all getting paid 700 and 850,000 a year compensation, which means no tax. So if you are compensated, that's not going up over and above. A compensation is damaged and you're being brought back to parity, basically. So there's no tax in that. So these guys were getting 850,000 to be the CEOs of Queensland Treasury Corp, State of Queensland, State of Victoria, all filed in the US SEC as companies. So I said to Ergon, well, that sounds like a pretty good price.
A good deal.
That's a good deal. I'll take that one. And I sent them a notice. I said, well, you can respond and get back to me and drop the price if you want to. You know, maybe drop it even to just the price of the power. But at the moment, and they didn't respond. They just didn't respond. So then they got and dragged me into court. So I go in there. And when the magistrate said, did you respond to these letters? He's agreed to pay the debt, but he's charged you this much. And then Darren Brace, the sheriff, started bawling, started like you're sitting there. And I was in the witness box, and I got out of the witness box and put my arm around him. I said, it'll be right. I said, we all love each other in a spirit of brotherhood, don't we, Mr. McFadden? And he's the magistrate, big fat guy. He's just going, oh. And he said to Darren Brace, the sheriff, he said, if you don't respond, what can I do? He's going, what can I do to save you? You have to respond to a notice. If you send a notice of a bill and he writes back, you must respond within the set time, 14 days or 28 days. So what happened is Darren Brace was bawling, and I got back on the stand, and then McFadden, the magistrate, said, my arms are tied. I'm tied. I'm tied by this contract that I responded to. And at that time, I think it was $14 million. And I didn't, it just started with 8, and it just added up. And I'm going, God, these guys just, so I just kept on sending them. And then Mr. McFadden in there said, look, the magistrate said, what do you want to do about this 14 million? He said, I can't, the bill is invalid because the bill that was sent by Ergon was written in dog Latin. And he said, I agree. It's not your bill. He said, it is not your bill. You don't have to pay it. And then he said, what do you want to do about the 14 million that was owed to me? And I said, I wasn't ready for that. And then I said, in my back of my head, I said, I didn't do it for money. I didn't do this for money. I just did it. It wound up like that. And then I said, well, to be honest, Mr. McFadden, the magistrate, I said, I opened the mail and responded, but did I violate the mail law for opening another person's mail and claiming another person's name, which was the surname. The surname belongs to the state. Yeah. Even though we think it's our name, it's not our name, it belongs to the state. We don't have any business to open it. Well, we've been committing this crime by opening these mail. So I said to Mr. McFadden, I said, look, I opened this. Did I commit a crime? Am I a criminal too for even opening this mail? And then Mr. McFadden said, you know what? Would it be okay if we handled the 14 million at another date? And I said, I think so, because I said, I don't want to be a criminal either. I should have said, take the money, but it wasn't. It just was a point that I proved. And then after that, McFadden went straight into hospital. He had a heart attack, but he was 6 weeks, I heard, at the Calvary, and there was a police officer and two of the court blokes that were in there with me, because I was dragged in because I was a criminal because I didn't pay my electricity bill, so they said. And they just said, what happened in that court case? They said, what happened? Because they didn't realise that it wasn't a court case, it was just commerce. They wanted me to pay the bill. I said, yeah, I'll pay the bill. Here's the bill. Because the bill is not correct. And that's all that happened with that. But in the end, the police and the government, within a week, just came out and pulled all my power. So I then, okay, well, I'll go back. Here's all your money that you want, paid the power, and then kept on going with the bills, and it wound up to $29 million. And at the end of the court case, this lawyer from over the road, Paul Richardson, he said, Rom, I want to help you get the 29 million. And he said, but I want the 29 million, and we'll give you the thing called the black card, which is the card which is directed to the credit account, which people say it's a black card because it just it doesn't run out, because that's
the access to your true wealth.
That's the true wealth. That's where the government access it, or that governing corporation access it. Yeah. So what he wanted to do, he said, you give us the 29 million and we'll give you the card. And I said, done deal. Because the money that's inside their system, the dollars that we get, you can't actually buy anything with it, because it's a promissory note, and anything bought with a promissory note is not. That's why no matter if you buy a house, if you don't pay the rates in 3 years or something, they'll come and just take it off. You can have it completely paid for, but you paid it with this cash, this promissory note, that means that it's never been paid. So that's why I lost interest in all these great big billions and millions of dollars that you can get, because it's actually worth nothing. But that card, that's what I wanted. And he said, to use this card, don't live on the top floor of the Hilton. You don't have to live on the bottom floor. But he said, if you can just be discreet about it. So I said, you know what? That was the whole point of this whole exercise, to actually exercise the true standing of the creditor, or the benefactor, and there's another word for that, but I can't think of it. The patrician. It's patrician and plebeian, which is debtor and creditor. There's many different words for these things. Yeah. And what happened then is I agreed to give the 29 million, so that would wipe out because this debt is still sitting with the government. And the lawyer said, we've got to sort this out. Otherwise it won't go away. And it's just accruing, and they have to sort it out. So I was eager to do that. I'll just get the card and go and live this great so-called life. And he said, I can even go to Thailand. Okay. But after that, I said, okay, I will write a notice of acceptance to hand over the debt. That means it would be wiped off the government debt, or they would have to pay the lawyer. And I then wrote to the Registrar General, who is the guy that signs your birth certificates and certificates of birth. That's your trustee. That is the king, the guy in there. There's not the government, it's not the banks, it's none of those. That's the guy, because this is the guy that the bishop of the Catholic Church gives your soul print to this guy. And the bishop holds your soul print, which is the base of where they print all the money that's in the world. It comes from your soul print. So in this case, I'd come back to the soul print. I'd found my soul, but the real S-O-L-E, that one. And so with Paul Richardson at the lawyers, I then said, I will write the letter, I will get it to the Registrar General to give over the $29 million, and I'll take the card. So I went back in 3 days and I said, I've written my letters, here it all is, and he was cool with that. And he'd also worked out, I think, with Aaron Stubborn, who was the other court, what do they call him, registrar at the court, but there's two registrars there for some reason, a higher court and a lower. And so they worked all that out. And then that day, Paul, after we did all the paperwork and everything, Paul Richardson, the lawyer, said, Rom, I've received some really serious death threats. And I laughed and I said, welcome to the club. Welcome to the club. Because my death threats came from the CIB, the top of the police, and he had to say that in court. He didn't want to say it in court, but it came up. Anyway, I laughed it off, and then Paul Richardson laughed it off too. He said, yeah, you're right, you know. I said, you're a lawyer, you know, they don't go killing you. I'm the man they'll kill, because I'm the man that's trying to, you know, they call buck the system, but I wasn't. I was just trying to make the system work. And then I was to go back in 28 days, because it's 14 days there, and then wait for 40. That's the process of law. And went back on the 28th day, and Paul Richardson into the office, and all the secretary, the girls were crying. And they said, Paul, fuck. They said Paul's dead. You know, and that was it. Then I went over to the police station, and they said they didn't want to know anything about it, because I said he got death threats, and then on the 20th, he died one day before I got back in there. And so I went over to the police station and I said, I've got to tell you this, Paul had death threats. And they turned the lights out in the Queensland police station and said, the office is closed, we don't want to know about it. So that's what happened to Paul. And then what had happened, I'd say that because Paul was in the legal system, technically he's not allowed to touch, because it's a trust system. So they have to uphold the trust. And I assume that Paul, because Paul was a registered lawyer, they signed the bar. It's like a Masonic oath. And then he probably couldn't do it, but he tried to do it. He tried to organise it. And that was another thing that really frightened me. I'm still alive. And, you know, he could have, because they said he died of natural causes. But, and that's when I really realised that this whole system is more serious than, I took my death threats as a joke. But when Paul died, now I'm not saying he died, he was killed, but it was just a coincidence. It was too, yeah, I'm not making that claim, but it was, you know, and Paul was just one of those lawyers that was always there, and so were a couple of the magistrates. They could see that this was a trust, and I was actually probably getting close to working this out. But that was a stop. Now the Ergon, I've never stopped. I just pay the Ergon bill. I still send them the debts, and even the other day, probably a couple of years, the council also got a debt. I sent them one for 5.2 million because of the 750 per 850,000 per water and one per rates. Over 3 years came up to 5.2 million. I sent that. They laughed at the contract, and then 3 months after they laughed at the contract, Steve Cavendish, the housing guy, came running down to me with a $5.2 million debt sent by the Registrar General, because I sent the Registrar General the debt to agree to pay the rates. And when it came, and so the Registrar General sent that to him, because he's my trustee. If I was a citizen, I would be his trustee, but because I'm a benefactor and not a beneficiary, he became my trustee. So the Registrar General sent that bill, and Steve come running down, we got this bill, and I said, well, am I paying my rates happily? And all the girls in the counter said, hey, he's our nicest customer, he's always happy, pays his rates. And I said, well, I'm happy, I did the right thing, I paid the rates, you wanted the rates paid, I did all of that. And I said, now you be happy about that debt and pay it and give it to the Registrar General. He said, but you're not getting it. How come he gets it? I said, because he's my trustee. And maybe at some time when this, I think it's 70 years and 10, the pagan trust lasts 70 years. So after the pagan trust is over, it may have to mature or pay out. So those debts that are in there, may have to be paid out at the end of 70 years. But this is all testing, and but the fact that I sent the debt to the Registrar General, and the fact that the Registrar General sent the debt to the council, and after that, I think it was, what's his name, Andrew Jack, the CEO of the council.
Of the King's Council?
Gone. Because the CEO is the one that's responsible for that. I offered the CEO the right to meet in chambers to discuss it, to drop those charges, you know, because I don't want it's our council too, and we don't want to destroy our councils. So that's no. Well, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, they still fix the roads. Okay. Duh. So that's but they're interesting things that by getting involved in this trust thing or seeing the government how it really is. When the government is faced with the reality of it all, that's when things start to go a bit skewy. But as you can see, the depth of it and the complications to get into my position, it's a choice. If you've got a good life, if you're benefiting from, even though it's a fraud, if you're benefiting from it before you go down this path and nearly destroy yourself, just, you know, I have to say you've got to weigh these things up. And I mean, we know it's a fraud. I know it's a fraud, but the last thing I want to do is encourage people to you know, destroy their own life or have a life like the last 15 years of my life has been hell. But in other ways, I'm glad. I feel really like it's an incredible amount of power. You do have a directive power over the state. And they were the final words of Mr. Comans in the court case. He said, I don't have the power of direction, I only have the power of administration. This is the magistrate. He said, whereas Rom V, in his political stand, holds the power of direction over the state. So even he admitted it.
And he told the prosecutor.
He told the prosecutor, and then that was the end. That was the end of the court case.
Prosecutor, you need to get used to this.
Yeah, he said, yeah, and that's the other end. He said, you better get used to it. So ever since that, every time the police or anything, now there might be things that are slowly starting to happen because police. There was another thing. Police used to give out tickets on the side of the road. Well, if it's a fraud, any police officer that hands out a ticket is uttering fraud, which is life imprisonment. If the banking system is a fraud or a counterfeit, then that means that police that are working with the banking system are issuing or uttering counterfeit documents on public lands. And so police have had to come back, and they've got iPads and that now, where they are starting to just do the iPad. And I told them, I've said to the Registrar General, some of these notices, you better stop doing that. Otherwise, your police are going to be in trouble for fraud or whatever. So now they do the iPad, then send the mail, to send the ticket through the mail. And then when you open that ledger and that dead spirit comes out and grabs you, that's your own fault. Yeah, you've consented to it. But they have to follow those satanic, Masonic, Jesuit rules, and they have to start following it more and more, because more of us are starting to work out the reality or how it really works. And you know, like tonight, a lot of you will go, "Wow, that's a lot," but at some point in the future, all of you guys are going to go, "Well, what really is happening here?"
Yeah.
You know, this is not common, or this is not anything normal. This is something completely left field, or
And like this, guys, how are we doing? I just want to take a temperature check on us now. Are we all right so far still?
Yeah.
You're still hanging with us? All right.
I've got 1,000 questions.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna.
And it's going to take 10 years to get through it, because I would like, look, I've been really quiet, but I just want to say thanks to you guys too, because I haven't been, it's good to be with like-minded people, and you know what I mean? So it's
as far as our time limitations go, we do have.
It was. Yeah. I'd just like to say that's still running at the moment, which is amazing. When it hit 100 views, I shit myself. And at the moment, it's still running. I haven't put a video out for a year, and it's running at between 600 and 900 a day. So that it's over 2.2 million views. So it's pretty amazing. I reckon I've got a few things wrong in the earlier videos, but they're all full of very interesting stuff to get people to open up and see there's something more to this, you know. But I appreciate it. Yeah, I see that, and when people are on the debtor side or holding the surname side, like you were saying before, they want you in prison. They want you down. And I think what might happen in the end is that people will eventually just go, I've had enough of being the debtor of a foreign private corporation. And that's that day when people will just, they'll know themselves they've had enough. And I guess what I'm saying is there is a way out of this. And Christ, he's the one that actually has told it, because he said, come out of her, don't be with her. And the way we've been put into this is through the surname. And the name that was given to us by Christ, or it even says on this document, Christian name, is the name that you become back to the creditor. But, you know, the thing, I don't get any government assistance, but I worked this out earlier. I've got my room rentals, I've built some units on the property. So I've got enough income to survive and pay the rates and do all that sort of thing. I'm no millionaire, but I'm happy just being able to survive and live quite well, probably in around 1,000 or 1,200 a week, without ever going to the government for it. And even when the council came out, they said, "Oh, you've built flats on your thing." I said, "Yeah, well, if you put your name and date of birth and tell me to pull them down, I'll do it." So then we talked about rock and roll and guitars, because I love that sort of stuff, and a cup of tea. I said, you're welcome here, rock and roll and guitars, to talk about that. Any government official, but if they talk about anything else, it's 120 grand. And so they quickly go back to guitars and rock and roll. And that's, it's always boils down. So there are ways that we can do it, and we've just got to start looking at it. This is not a government. This is just a company. It is BlackRock. It's all coming out now. Yeah. It's BlackRock, it's Vanguard and State Street, and you name it, you know. And we don't even know. We probably do know these people. And when David slung that thing, that rock up into that giant, what do they call it? The Nephilim. The Nephilim. Now, a lot of people go, these Nephilims are giant. The Nephilim are the corporations. They are the giant. Monsanto is a giant. Gates, that's a giant. These are the real giants. And if you look at the symbolism of David flinging that stone at the head. So if you want to fling a stone at the head of one of these corporations, go on to the US SEC. You'll even find Australian corporation, and their address is there, and the bloke you're going to throw that notice to. Whenever I send a notice to a company or corporation or the Commonwealth of Australia, that's the one I go through. But I actually send it to him, this guy first, and then to send a copy of that to that head. And that's all David did. He just slung that stone, which is one of those all uppercase letters, the stone writing on the graveyards. You put your notice and you use that satanic stuff and lob it at the head, which is on the USCC. Then you'll see the CEO and the secretary or whatever they are. That's who you address the notices to. So that's the way. That's the other side of getting around this, and that's what I want probably more people to start looking into it. If you want to find a company, just go into the USSEC, a United States Securities Exchange Commission, and put in company search, put the company there, and it's amazing who you start to find.
Oh yeah.
And you'll find their name, their address, they're all on there, these poor buggers. They've exposed themselves, you know, and then that's when you start to control these monsters. But I hope, yeah, and those that was one of my bitches about these Bibles. I have a Jerusalem Bible, and there's no glosses or all uppercase or debased text in it. But in the King James Version, I mean, it all reads right, but when you put some words in all uppercase language, what you're actually doing, even though the word is assumed to be there, you've taken it out by putting all uppercase text. You've changed the language from English to another. If you've got Lord written with four all uppercase symbols, technically the Lord has been removed from that Bible in a technical sense. So when you walk into the Bibles in the court, I mean, they do change the English words as well, but you walk in the Bibles in the court and you open them up, and these Bibles with the all uppercase words are in there, technically removing it. And I think at the end, anyone that in Revelations, you're not supposed to change anything in the Bible, otherwise you burn it or whatever. I forget what they do to you, but it's not good to change you can't change the words in the Bible. So by glossing or putting a different language in there, technically you're removing those words. And I think that's what another thing, it's blasphemy, you know, I don't know, it is, you know, and even with the English, I haven't looked into what you're looking at there, but my complaint was by putting this all uppercase text, which is satanic text. It belongs to Satan. It doesn't belong to the English language. Now, that is the key, is to go down without going into battle. And in all of my events in court, there was no battle. I was agreeing. I said, no, I want to plead guilty. I want to do whatever you want to do. We've just got to talk about the compensation. And with all the people here tonight, you might not get it straight off. You know, there's a lot to put into your head. But at least maybe tonight you can sort of see, or the beginning of it, or where it's the spark that sort of starts it, where you know you're going down this path and you suddenly went, oh my gosh, it's actually that way, you know. So once you start turning the road or find the right road to go down, and that's why I do warn people before you do this. But as time gets on and you start to see it, and more people, I think that the whole system it's not going to. We don't want it to collapse. We just want even people in the system will start to go, oh, this, you know, because even people in the system that are doing this against us, they don't even know. And even when they wake up to it, they've got children, they've got their lives as well. And probably in general, they don't want to do this to themselves. But a lot of people are just still so, you know, we've got a few woke people. I don't mean woke the bad way. I mean, woke in the dictionary actually means to be aware of what's going on. So we've got a few people in here, which is probably a minute part of the general public, but you know, it sure is a good start to. I mean, it's way better than a start. You've got a lot of people that are starting to at least look, and And I have been called less of a nutcase in the last 4 or 5 years than I've ever, I don't even think I've been called a nutcase for the last probably two or three.
Nutcase.
Yeah.
You're my nutcase.
But you know what I mean? I bet you went through it as well. When you were first doing this, you would have gone through this. People say you're absolutely crazy and it doesn't make sense. Now, yeah, well, in that system, you're not man, you're not human, and if you hold any form of state identification, don't even go there. You cannot be a man while you hold citizenship, which is an antichrist. You've agreed to the antichrist, and you walk in and become a member of or a subdivision of the antichrist. You're holding the driver license, you're holding the bank accounts. So don't go in there and say I'm a man, because you're not. And they go, no, you're not a man. They don't. You know, you've got to stop being a member of the antichrist system before you can come back. And even I will not go back to being man yet. Maybe later on, when if the system crashes. But all you want to do is you want to come back to a thing called the benefactor or the human, which is the colour of man, which means in the second system you have the right of man, but only the benefactor. And the benefactor is the one that grants. All of you here, before you became citizens, you owned a share of this land. Now that's the other thing that is very important. The reason why Australia, the reason why the geographical location of Australia is Norfolk Island and not here, is because they'll ask you, are you an Australian citizen on any document? Or what do they call it? A native or Australian. If you write, yes, I'm an Australian, what they go, oh, this guy's from Norfolk Island. We'll look them up. No, they're not here. Lost at sea. Lost. Because Australia is Norfolk Island. This was never changed. And if you just read any history book, I think Flinders tried to change or tried to call this land Australia. The only thing they could do is call the country Australia. And the word country means a designated area of land under foreign occupation. So the country of Australia is a designated area of land under foreign occupation. And the person that has no human right is the occupier of a land. You don't have human rights. And it says it in the international law. So, you know, when they bought this mandated, they violated the whole 10 Nuremberg codes. The whole 10 were violated with that. They were just as bad as the Nazis and they're trying to say that, but we murdered them when they breached those Nuremberg codes. We hanged a number of them. Some got whatever, but it was a true thing. This government did the same thing, but what they've done is that the citizen of Australia is not a human. It's a citizen, therefore it's only an animal, and it doesn't have a human right. So to get back from citizenship to civilianship, or back into a benefactor standing, then or a man or a human standing, then you have human rights. And that's how they've gotten away with this, because all of us here, I'm not anymore, I haven't been a citizen for years, but any citizen that is here is making the claim, I am not human, I'm an animal, and I am a foreign occupier, and I don't have human rights. By simply being a citizen, you're standing up and saying, I'm shit, I'm scum. But we just didn't know. You know what I mean? We've been deceived and tricked into the citizen. Remember when we were civilians? So, you know, but go on, you. Okay. Sorry.
I've got well, it's all your fault.
Yeah.
I was going to behave myself, but then I couldn't help myself.
I'm glad I've been, you know, incited a bit of a...
You said, what if there was another way? Well, then they might actually be able to stand up and have the courage to do what we actually were meant to do.
The thing, yeah, and I agree with that, But the thing is, you just got to work out what Australia is. And if Australia is not what we thought it was, we can't go around claiming someone's private company. If Australia belongs to someone private, or some people in BlackRock, then we're not supposed to be claiming it's their property. Australia might not be our property. And that's probably a bit like tonight, I'm probably saying more, is that we may have to look at what Australia is and then start to, in numbers too, is to go, we've probably got to get off that ship and create our own ship, because that ship is it's foreign, it doesn't belong to us. And as I think it's the Interpretations Act, Section 2B, the 1901 Interpretations Act, Section 2B, clearly states that Australia is a foreign company. And it's a country which is a company. So we don't want to go around trying to claim someone else's company. We've got to get that bit right. But the other side that you're talking about, I think when a lot of people come together, which was eventually probably what will wind up happening, that's when the numbers come in. But tonight, I guess each and every one of us can deal with this corporate thing that we've got. And you can actually deal with it in such a way that you can actually frighten the crap out of it as well. Because we are the ones that granted that, we're the ones that granted the Vatican the dominion, which is the ownership of all the mineral and energy wealth of this land. We granted to them as the administrator, and we can take that back if we know where we stand within the trust. And all I've noticed is the minute I stood back into this side of the trust as the benefactor, even the magistrates turned around and said, you have directive power of the state, and told the state, you've got to do what he says. When I send the bill to the Registrar General, David John, he doesn't use his surname, just David John, he sends the bill to the council for $5.2 million, and the council was stuck with the bill. So now that did go back into my account. I don't have access to that account. I don't care at the moment, as long as they had to pay. And it sort of taught them a little bit of a lesson that that there is something going on that they didn't know. With all these CEOs and these companies and corporations, they think they've got all the power, but they don't. And the only way they've got the power is the ignorance. All of our ignorance of how the system really works. So tonight has got nothing to do with big crowds. It's each and every individual one of you people have this power here. It's there. It's all for everyone, and you can step out of it, and you can become a director of your estate. And your estate, as they say, it's probably worth about. Now, this was strange. I worked it out through the Pan Am disaster, because what happened with the Pan Am thing, it was shot down in international waters, and at that time, they had to pay out the actual sovereign trusts of the 350 or whatever dead people on the plane. And it came to, back then, $6 million, way back then. And at that same time, a jumbo jet, if you went to go into the jumbo sale yard and said, I'd like to buy a jumbo jet, it was $6 million. So we worked out the price that each and everyone's trust is $6 million. And then by the time we worked it out, we went and rang up and got the price of a equivalent to a jumbo, but jumbos then had just gone off the market. And it came to, I think, 60, if you want to buy one of them big jets, it costs about 64 million at that. So we added up, so the trust must be worth around 60 to 70 million each. Now, when we were doing this research, Rowan, the other guy that works with me, and he's an incredible researcher as well, I found the book, he found it in the book, because we got the book, and I went, yeah, anyway, and I gave up. I went, I've had it. I went into my mate, and he said, Rom, what's wrong? He says, I'm giving up. I can't take this anymore. I don't have the brains to do it. And I came home, and Rowan was there and he said, I found something in the book. And he opened it up to the 6.6 and he said, what do you reckon that is? And I actually got on the floor like a Muslim and kissed the ground going, thank you, God. Because right on the very end of that point, I was given up. Then whoever does this goes, oh, you know, here it is. So, but anyway, I think I forgot where I was before. Pan Am. Now the Pan Am jet, and so it worked out at $64 million for the jet. But what happened while Rowan and I was there, we got a strange call from a magistrate who said, you guys have cracked it. And I said, well, for a start, you shouldn't be talking to us. You're a magistrate. You've taken the same type of Masonic oath, which is the Jesuit oath, because once they become creditor, debtor, administrator, once you get up to the top of the administrator, they tell you things that you are not to know, or the reality of how the trust works. And he called us, he said, you guys have cracked this code, you're onto it. He said, I wanted to get into my estate, but now that he's signed his oath of office, he can never access that, because once you become that, and that's probably what happened to Paul Richardson, the other lawyer, and but he said, you've made an error with the value of the trust. And I said, oh, okay, well, what was it? What do you think? And he said, at the moment, probably about 3 years ago, it was sitting at 144 million. So each and every one of us, 144 million, and that comes because of the reserve. You know how it's called the Federal Reserve? The money is not based on what's pulled out of the ground. The money is based on there's a mining lease. What do we estimate? How much coal is in that for the next 40 years? So they worked that out. That's worth 100 trillion, whatever, zillion dollars. Then the what do they call them? The doctor of geology writes up what the piece of land is worth, and then files that with the US Federal Reserve, and then that is the promissory note money system. So our promissory note is really based on the Federal Reserve, what's in the ground for the future. So it's and that's how the figure has become so large. But you know, the governments, they still have to access our accounts through a process of law, and that's why they really want to get us so in debt, so that our debt is really their credit. So the more these governments, destroy our societies, creating massive debt, it actually creates a credit for them, because as the debt builds up to 60 trillion, 70 trillion, whatever it is, they owe that back to us, that never return to where we are supposed to be to collect that debt. And because we don't return, they pocket it. And that's why they want us dead. And that's why these world wars have come. Every time their world wars come, they murder. They don't care what citizens, Russians, Germans, English, whatever it is, they don't care what citizens are dying. It's just as long as the citizen is dying before they work out that they've got to come back to the creditor side of the trust. And then the Vatican, or whoever the banker is, which is the Vatican, would have to pay its debt. But at the moment, all the money that we borrow from the Vatican, they are not paying it. We pay them back. They do not pay it back to where they got it from, which is the real us. And that's I used to say that was the motive behind these world wars, and what could be the Third World War if too many people start dying of these and stuff. So all I can say is about that is just be careful. Be careful with that.
Romley.
Yes.
I was just wondering if you are familiar with a couple named Murkinda and Judgy in Mullaney in Queensland, and they've made a website called Terra Australis State Assemblies.
No, I don't, but good. Terra Australis.
Because they advocate for reconveying back to the land, and I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that, Bertie.
Well, actually, yeah, it's coming back to before you join citizenship of Australia, which is a foreign company, this is the District of Cairns. So what this one does is brings me back onto this land here. So, and as well, they've even told us, the government has told us that Australia is Norfolk Island. They've told us. And we can argue it and whatever. And even when I raised that in the court, the last time I was in there, when I said, look, do you want to be my trustee or not? Because if you don't, you can just ship yourself back to Norfolk Island. She said, oh, you can just go. So they do know this stuff. But bringing back, the way I see it, I don't know if I'm totally right, but if we came back to here, then Australia, whatever it is now, it's got nothing to do with us. And so many people are hanging on to Australia, hanging on to those flags and everything, but that's not it. That doesn't belong to us. It's owned by some company.
Well, they are working with a retired judge in America named Anna von Reitz.
Oh, Anna, yeah, she's helped me in the
Right, okay.
Yeah, she's lovely.
So, and they're starting their own land recording system, and
well, Anna would know, and it's probably if she's involved, she would probably know what's going on. But if you look at another thing strange about America, there's America and there's also the United States. If you look at it, the geographical location of the United States, from what I can see, is the bottom half of New York. There's a big creek thing that was a bit of like broken off there, and Long Island and Manhattan. It's going out. And apparently I heard that the Indian, the tribal people did own it, but they bought it for $45. So New York was bought for $45. But that is, so all the United States citizens, like you were a United States citizen. No, you were. But if they do the same thing to the United States citizen, is say, are you a United States citizen? I'm a United States citizen, which just removed him off the United States of America, or off America, and placed him down into that little bit of where that city is. It's removed them off there. And the United Nations are on there as well, with all their, probably the USCC. So what they're doing is they're taking us from our true lands and legally placing us into some little islands or all to do with the British Admiralty and the City of London. So, and it's all Vatican, which puts us into the International Bank of Settlements and the Vatican World Bank, which is again run by the Rothschilds, who are the trustees of the Vatican. So it all boils back to this One World Trust started in 1302, which is the Unum Sanctum. Yeah, that's it. So, sorry, yeah.
I have two questions for you.
Okay, I'll try.
My first one is, when are you going to write this all down so we can pass it on to every other generation? And secondly, how do we get our live birth?
Okay. I've had many people say, if you don't want to write a book, if you don't want to do more videos, write a book. So that would probably be great. It's a good idea. I've thought about it, but now when you apply for the birth, this thing here, you're going to have trouble because they don't want to give it out, but it's your right to get it. And when you do it, you don't fill out any forms. You could either write a letter to the Registrar General and your name and date of birth. Your name is your Christian name only, and the date of birth is the date of registration. If you look on your birth certificate, just look down further, date of registration. And the date of registration, I'll just show you on this, hang on. Now, the date of registration on your state birth certificate refers to that stamp date. And the word date in the Black's Law Dictionary refers to the date of the acknowledgement of the deed and not the day it was created. So when you come from the womb, the only thing they gave you on that day was your surname. They tied that to your ankle or foot or toe, whatever, and then they set up the paperwork and everything. And then the real date of registration, your real date of birth, happened on the date it was filed in the court, and that's that date up there. But you can see this here or on your state of birth. So what you've got to ask for is you give your full name, which is only your Christian name, because that's the only name that you legally have, your Christian name only. And it'll be a name. Kentucky Fried Chicken is 3 words, makes up one name. So you might think first and second name, you might have 2 words for a name. So that means that your one full name may be, like my full name is Romley Stewart, and that's all there is. I don't even dare utter the surname because it is not my name. It belongs to them. So I don't even utter it anymore. But by not uttering it, by not doing that, suddenly I've been exempt from a whole lot of, they can't even send you a charge, and they can't, because when you go back to your Christian name, you are the actual owner of this land here. But because we chose the surname to get a benefit from the state, we left our true standing, and they won't let you get a benefit from the state unless you change your name to the one they got,
And if I don't hear back from them?
What you do is you write to them and make a demand. Just say, this is what I want, this is what... you tell them you've got every right to have it, and then get it picked up from the counter, from the registry office, the court. So you just go into the court and apply for it in the court. I got this at the courthouse, and that's what they couldn't believe. They said, how could you get this at the courthouse? They only give the other ones out. No, they give the 2.
So I get the address I say to mail it to is the courthouse?
Yes, say I want it mailed to the courthouse, and you want to pick it up over the counter. So then that means that it goes to their name. They're the ones that open the ledger. They open it up. You're not touching it, because if they send it to you, then you've got to put your surname down. So the minute it goes to your surname, you become the trustee of your own name. You don't want to be the trustee of your own name, because that's what we all have become, trustees of our own name. You want to be the real thing. So you've got to tell the Registrar General, is that Queensland? Yeah, I think it's still David John. I'm not sure if he's that, but you write to the Office of Registrar General, heirs and successors. So that means that whoever takes that office, whoever gets in there, he's got to answer to it. So it doesn't matter who sits in the office, because it's you need the office, and then you just write that you need your certificate of birth, and you give you only your name, not your surname. Don't have anything to do with your surname. Put the date of registration, not as your date of birth is just date of registration. Don't write date of registration. Put the actual date.
And do the courts somehow contact me?
They'll probably call you, ring you up or something. I think they did that to me. I came in, and when they opened it up, even the girls at the court said, "What's that?" I said, "That's a real birth certificate."
Can you decide where you were born? Like the state of the city or the town?
Well, yes, you can, but also there'll be a number in registry, and when you look at your certificate of birth, not the number up. Oh, this is certificate of birth on your state birth certificate. It'll have just a number up there somewhere, but look for the number in registry. So I think it's a 5-digit number, and then you add the year that you were born in the front of it. So my registry number is, the number I use is 19561565, but the number on this is without the 1956. So what, her name was, she's a lovely lady. the Registrar General, when I was speaking to him, he didn't know what was going on. So she put me onto this other girl, and she said, the reason why you've got to put your date of birth is because when they go through the registry books, they go through the year. So if you were born in 1980, whatever it is, they go to 1980, and then they go and look for your the 5-digit number. So when you put number in registry, add the year you were born, 1980, or so, and then the 5-digit, and make it a whole 9-digit number. So that's another important, and that makes it easy for them to find your record in the records.
And if it's like my hubby's from another state, does he just do the same thing but just
He would have to do it at that, and he may even have to, sometimes he could get it sent, but he may have to front up to go back and pick it up over the counter. The counter's the safest part because you don't want them sending them to a surname or a trustee. You want to go in the real you. So, and that's how I did it, and I got it. I mean, you know, they don't like it, and you're probably going to have trouble getting it because they're not doing it. But I've got a few friends. I said, no, go and tell them. You get that. You demand it. She said that they must give it to you. You can say that. You can say that because that's one of the Queen. I think my will or my wish or something. My will.
Is there a cost to get it?
Yeah, I think it's more. It was over $100. They want their money. But I paid it happily.
Yeah.
You know, because I got this. Technically, you don't. And when I won, this is a strange thing. I'm wasting time, but when I got Ergon Energy, I on the second account, I went into the court and hired just a little room. You know, when you go into the courthouse, anyone can use it. It's there for anyone. So I hired a little room. I think it was $80, and then I summoned Ergon Energy to the court, to that room, for a chat to work out, you know, what. So I fronted on. I gave them 28 days or something, whatever it is, to get there, and I went up and fronted up there, and went up to I think the second or third floor, and sure enough, they left the office. One of the little rooms was open, the lights were on. I went, oh, cool. And I sat down there, waited for the 2 hours. I think it was from 1 till 3. And no one turned up. And so I thought, well, no one's turned up to court. And if I wanted a magistrate, it was an extra $800 or $800. So it would have been $80 for the room plus $800. But I didn't need the magistrate because I just wanted them to come and talk about the bill first. And then I went downstairs. I wrote out the minutes on my little notebook, which is just a notebook. And I said, oh, I turned up at this time, waited, Ergon Energy didn't turn up, blah, blah, end of the time, left the court. And I went down to the girl and I said, here's my minutes. They said, yeah, no worries. They got the court stamp, went over there, did a photocopy of the book, and I said, can you send that copy to the Registrar General to let them know? And you know what? When I was talking to Paul Richardson, the poor guy that got killed, he said, you won. They didn't turn up to court. I said, yeah, for $80. I just went and hired the courtroom. And he just said, but you did it. So even he was going, you know, he was, like I fluked it. But that's all you have to do, just so that you go to the administrator, and they didn't turn up. And because they didn't turn up to court, they lost the case. It was just, what do they call? They acquiesced, but it's default. Yeah, they defaulted on the whole thing. So sometimes those courts down there, even they did, and even the registrar, she came down. She said, you know, Rom, this court's for everybody. It's not just for us or the police. They're private courts, so anyone can hire them. And so that was just another way I won the case. So, or even with the council, I offered them a chance to in chambers. I said, would you like to meet in your chambers, or I can hire a room in the court. Come down and we'll spend a couple of hours there, bring some cakes or whatever. But you can, you know, it's only in the little room, and have the talk. But if they do not turn up, they've defaulted. And then whatever you've said, because I never make when I say you're going to pay $850,000 a year, I say how would you like to? How about 850,000? What do you reckon of this? You know, do you think that'd be all right? The 850, and we'll meet at the court and we can have a talk about it. The minute they don't come to court, then I go, oh, Jim, they must have agreed to the 850,000, and then I send them a notice. You defaulted at court. It's 850,000. So you don't make the deal straight up. You ask them what would they like to do, and then so that's how I handle these matters, and that way you stay friends with them. Not really, but but yeah, they think you're a bit. But I haven't done. Whoops. Yeah. Anyway,
I realise with the Registrar General, I'd have to go back to New South Wales.
Yes.
Right? But how would anyone that's born overseas, how would they get on getting a birth certificate?
That's going to be the same thing, And when
from Germany, I'll bring it next time.
you did it,
No, I've got one. It looks real original because it's still written in this old German language.
yeah,
And I'll bring it next time.
yeah, bring it out.
Well, I think the question is,
Oh, I just want to ask one question.
Yes.
When you picked that up, did you have to show the proof of who you are?
No,
Well, how did they say, oh, you just got something?
because if I had to give any form of identification, I would be identifying as a citizen of the state, and that means I could not touch that.
No, but how did they know to give it to you?
Because I was just a rat bag, and I said, hey, right, that's what I. But they knew who I was, because I went in there and wrote out they asked for identification. I said, no, how can I have identification? It's me. I gave you all the information, and then I actually David John, who was the Registrar General, he rang me up. And then I said to him, that's what I want. They said, yeah, okay, no worries. And then sent it to the court. And they have to give it to you. But because I gave all the information, and I was the one that gave the true date of birth, the true name, and the true number, number and registration.
yeah.
So, yeah,
What did you ask for when you went?
I said, I want my birth certificate. And they said, you need a name and date of birth. I said, yeah, no worries. Romley Stewart, 2011.
And then they pulled it up.
Yeah. And then within probably 7 seconds, they had it on the phone. Hey, we found it. But the thing is, when it did come up, when the girls opened, I said, they tried to give me the envelope. Says, oh no, you've got to open that. I'm not opening that. That's not addressed to me. It's addressed to your court. So, okay. So they opened it up. But when they pulled it out, they said, what's that? I said, as I said, that's the real one. Because they said, we've never seen it. That can't be a birth certificate. I said, yes, that's the real one. It's because we just don't know. And again, that took a lot to work this out. You've got to somehow work out that you're not who you thought you were. It's really impossible to, because I thought, sorry.
How did you know that it was actually there yet?
Well, if I wrote the letter, I'd probably say, here's my phone number,
It had,
bell.
it had to be a trust that's got a debtor and a creditor. So when you get on even when you get on a cruise line, you've got a choice, debtor or creditor. So if it's a trust, this is the creditor side of the trust.
Did you just go to a week or two before you went back in?
It took 2 weeks for it to come up.
Yeah.
About 2 weeks.
No, no, no. They called you.
Yeah, they called me. It was quite. I thought it'd be up in days, but it actually was about 2 weeks.
So you put your phone number in the letter?
I put. They had a phone number. My phone number. I still have the phone, but it's under this name. They actually gave it under Romley Stewart. It's not under the other name. And then they sent me all this thing to get a nice new shiny phone. I went back in there, and they couldn't. There wasn't enough information to give me another phone. So they just said, "Oh gosh, we've somehow given you a phone without." I used this this number, the 1956-15635, and it worked. You know how you've got to give a license number or something? Well, I put that in there, and it actually worked. So they gave me a phone under Romley Stewart and this date of birth, which is nearly impossible. But I can't get another phone
by using this, so they've clamped down on that as well. Not that I really care, but it's but I still use my old phone that's actually got under this. But I know that they don't like people finding out about this.
Right. I'm gonna. We've got a lot more questions.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna pull us up here tonight.
Okay.
I think. Look, is it worth our time that if we ask you to come back in, Rom? Would you be all right with coming back in another day?
But it's just like weird stuff, and so just get. Don't hold anything against me. I'm telling you this stuff.
I think what would be valuable there is that the first time you hear this, information, your head can be really spinning and you're trying to catch up. Like if you can remember back tonight, what was one of the first things that he told you? Right? And there's a lot that we covered tonight, right? So my point is that when you hear it again, you'll soak it up a lot more. And we've tried to prepare you guys for this conversation so you can keep up with it, right? We talked about the Lieber Code and military law. We've talked about, the differences between the birth certificate, the state one, and the certificate of live birth. So you're able to keep up to an extent, but I think that if you hear it again, or a different version of this, or we carry on the conversation again, and you jump back into that conversation again, you really start to soak it in, because that's what I've done when I've spoken with Rom over the course of the last year-ish.
Yeah, Austin's been out a few times, and a couple of times he's going, "Oh, I think I get it." So you start to get your head around it. Everything's upside down. So I think that's what's going on. It reminds me of those upside down crosses in the Vatican. That's what it reminds me of. The cross is the wrong way out. So
you can see the cameras here. I'm going to do an edit on this, so people will have the chance to look back and reflect on it and have a bit of information. I'm not sure where I'll get that up, but my channel is Awakening in Health. I'm on BitChute and YouTube. This man's earlier stuff, as he said, is under Justinian Deception. That's also on YouTube. And I suggest you go back and troll through some of his older stuff. It's quite mind-blowing. As Austin said, I think it's impossible to get your head around anything in kind of clear sequence. I know a lot of Romley stuff and my head's still spinning after tonight. So don't worry about it. Just let the idea sink in. We're all striving forward. We're trying to make sense of everything. Even I think Romley will agree that he hasn't worked everything out fully, but at least he's taking that battle to this tyrannical system, and that's what we all got to do. We got to be disrupting the tyranny, but also, I guess, not making enemies, staying on the right a side of things as we can. But everybody, I really want you to put your hands together for Romley Stewart. Thank you so much, my friend.
thank you.
Right. Thank you guys all for your time tonight. We're just going to wrap up.